Welcome back to the Bounce Stadium Rants flagship NBA program. I am Kevin. With me is James. James, how you
What's
doing, man?
good, Kev? How you doing, man?
I'm great. I'm great. Hey, you. Before we get into all the basketball stuff, you just watched a movie, didn't you?
I
Any
did. I
spoiler free
did.
thoughts?
Yeah. So
Ooh.
I apologize for everybody. I was the reason we were late. I had a date with it. It is very good and it's very emotional. It's tough. It's tough at times. That's what I'll say. Dealing with Chadwick and his passing and how they go about taking care of it and acknowledging it in the movie, and the journey is pretty tough at times, but very, very good. Highly recommended.
Oh, okay, good. Because I am ready to watch it, but I did not have time, so I'm going to.
You didn't make plans before you signed up for the show like I did?
No, no, right, no. God bless. Luckily, I'm real cheap, and I have a membership, so I get to go see movies for $5 on Tuesday. So,
Oh, but yeah, Tuesday's the best day.
yeah,
Yeah, for that it is absolutely.
means I will be avoiding all of you on Twitter for the next 4 or 5 days. So don't take
Don't
it
even look.
personally.
Do not look.
Speaking of things you should not look at, we're going to start things off with a fun little clip. Um,
Well, I guess you
maybe
could
to
call it fun.
maybe to put it more correctly, more people should have been looking at this. So
Visual
here we
aids ready. Um,
and it had my audio over it. So there we go. But here we see something's amiss right after the made free throw. Wait, where we at? Wait, oh wait, there's wait, hang on 1 second. We're gonna have it. There he is. One D'Angelo Russell. Oh,
Oh no. Oh no, our LOL of the week, folks. My this face palm. He forgot he was in the game. That was I think it was out of a timeout. He forgot he was playing. Four on
I'm.
five. They went 4 on 5.
I feel bad. So I'm not gonna beat him up too hard for this because it's it happens. Like you would think that this stuff doesn't happen. I feel like it goes up there somewhere with the J.R. Smith offensive
Mm-hmm.
rebound,
Yep.
and there are just certain moments in basketball history where you're like, man, yeah, you really weren't paying any attention, were you? But
Just really was dozing off on that one. I agree with you. No, it's just I just laugh. I sent that to you and I was just dying.
well, I learned something new. I honestly was expecting the whistle to be blown because I didn't know that a player could check in that way, right? Even though
He
they were
had to.
shorthanded, like play had started, and he just runs
Mhm.
into the play.
He he had to be in the book, so that's the key. They're like he had to be the guy in the book checked in. Like so he just but it's so like nobody says anything. The only time I can think of anything similar was the college basketball game a few years ago when Colin Sexton was at Alabama and they had injuries and fouls and they played 3 on 5 in the second half. But that's all the players they had. It wasn't because they forgot to get on the court. They didn't have anybody. It's the only time I can ever think of something even similar to that. So
True,
I'm
yeah,
just
that
like,
and that's a good point. Like it's not technically against the rules to play with only four. So I guess there
don't
was no reason to
recommend
stop
it.
the play. Yeah,
Don't recommend it, but it's not illegal.
it's a bold strategy, Cotton.
Offensive
We'll see.
rebounding's tough, as you saw there. Pretty tough.
It would have been hilarious if they had gotten the stop. I think that's what
Oh, it'd
is
be an
the
elite
yeah.
defensive. But we would talk for an hour straight of how that defense worked, and that's why everybody needs to do it.
We'd have been praising them and after their big turnaround, just like we did when the Lakers finally
Yep.
won a game after Ant Davis decided to cherry pick on one
We'll
play.
we'll talk about that, but that Lakers they're back comment is blown up in our face. By the way,
Yep, yep. They are who we thought they were.
correct.
And I'm going to pull up a very interesting graphic that I saw.
Man.
This was courtesy of Phantom Sports on Twitter, so shout out to them. I don't know if
Hmm.
they made the graphic, but I want to give credit to where I took it from. But yeah, 14 30-point scorers last night.
So many,
N-
and I couldn't name them all. Me and you, we were missing one. We couldn't figure one out. So
it was
obviously we went through. You can see them all. I got it up here on my phone so I can see it better. You got Desmond Bain and Ja had the double 30 last night from Memphis. They're just killing it. Your boy. Was that Matherin's first 30-point game? I texted you
I
about that.
I believe it's his second already.
Second.
Yep.
He's playing. DeRozan's having a year. You got two Suns players. You got Booker, Miles Bridges, the dual Boston duo, which isn't surprising. Jalen and Tatum. LeBron got 30 before he got hurt. He left the game hurt last night.
Yeah, big
Mm-hmm.
big concern there because it's the groin again,
Mm-hmm.
which we will dive into that, and we're going to have
Yep.
a segment about that. But yeah, he played incredibly well before, at least scoring the basketball up
Yep.
until the injury. So
Mm-hmm. He was
um,
scoring it last night, which was way above his season average too. Then we got our boy Fred on there, Wichita State's finest, Donovan Mitchell. Laurie Markkanen continues his tear this year. You got Shea from Oklahoma City. And who is the last one? Who could we not figure out?
it was Carter, right? The
Yep.
Milwaukee Bucks. I
Defensive
Yeah,
ace, Javon Carter, known for his defense at West Virginia. Going out, he had 36 last night.
insane. And that if the Bucks, I mean, you're probably winning any game where Carter's getting 36, right?
Yeah.
Like at that point, that's a game that's very frustrating for the opposing team.
Mm-hmm.
Not to, of course, this guy would take the two of us on in a game of 2-on-1 just
And have
with his
100.
left hand. So
Have 100.
yeah,
Yeah.
don't
Mm-hmm.
mistake what my take here. But when a guy of that caliber, a defensive player, is dropping 36 on you, those are the nights where you just kind of throw your hands up.
Now he
So
did get a
what am
little.
I supposed to do?
Giannis didn't play last night, so there was extra points to go around, but still, he's averaging 8 a game. Wouldn't have you got to taken 20 guesses and wouldn't have guessed him ever. I didn't realize he was on the team.
I don't think he took up a lot of space in the scouting report is how I'll put
No,
that.
yeah,
Probably a very
I would agree with you on that front. Yes,
probably more talking about his defensive strategy than anything
correct.
else. He's going to try to make you go left or something where it's
Hmm.
like, yeah,
He's
I
gonna get up
assume
there,
that,
and yeah,
coach. I'm right-handed. Yeah.
yep, exactly. Yeah, Captain Obvious here. Thanks, Coach.
Yeah, I appreciate it, coach. Thanks for making me read this. But
Helping me
anyway,
out there,
that's a story for a different time. Huh? No.
right?
So we're talking about surprises with Carter, and to take it back to a topic that has been recurring over the course of our short tenure here. The
Hmm.
Nets have finally announced their head coach, and I'm going to say thankfully, I don't that's my personal opinion, but thankfully they chose not to go the Ime Udoka
Hmm.
route and chose to promote from within. And Jacques Vaughn, who I believe to be a pretty solid candidate, at least in this interim sense here, has been promoted to head coach. And
Hmm.
so I think we should talk about him because he has a lot of experience as an assistant coach, but also some head coaching experience
Hmm.
that on paper doesn't look great. So, James, before we get into that, what's your initial thought on the Nets going with Vaughn?
Same thing you said. I didn't like the other route in a franchise that's got so much drama and so much just it's a mess. They need cleaned up. There's so much upheaval and just a mess going on. I didn't like bringing Ime in and adding to that fire. I thought he's a great coach. There's no doubt about it. But what the situation they're in and then the baggage he brings from it's recent. It's not a year old anything. I like the idea of hiring from within. Now, like you said though, he has been head coach before and it wasn't great. Now, I don't even he coached the Orlando Magic from 2012 to 2015. I'm not even sure if I know who was on those teams.
Most don't, and for those of you who are curious, his record was 68 and 163. That is
Mhm.
a winning percentage below 30. For
Mhm.
those of you keeping score at home, he also had two very short stints while he's been in Brooklyn. So
Yep.
to just fill in the blanks on his history, after losing that job in Orlando 2014, 2015, while his team was 15 and 37, he took his current job as an assistant with the Brooklyn Nets. He's been there since then,
Mhm.
with one stint in 2019, 2020, where they won 7 of the 10 games that he coached. And then, of course, he has a record now of 3-2 so
Mhm.
far. And so it's, you've talked about, I'm gonna bring this up. I'm gonna bring up these Orlando Magic rosters just
I
for
don't, because that's
trip down
after
memory lane.
that's after Dwight. I think it's got to be after him. It's I don't know. I have no idea who's on those teams. I
I'm gonna put
really
it
don't
this
know.
way: the most popular player on the 2012 team is now a podcast host.
Oh
It's
god,
uh, it's
it's
JJ Redick is the biggest
yep.
name.
Okay, so
So
they
if
had a
that
dude.
helps, they had a dude. They had a young Tobias Harris on the 2013 squad.
Man, really young.
Oh, here's a blast from the past. Hedo Turkoglu was on the
Oh,
Magic
that was in the
in
twilight of his
2013.
career. Yeah. So it is the back end of the Dwight Howard teams.
Yes, and then
History.
to get to just to let's see. So, but the point of the story here being there wasn't a lot of meat on those bones. We have
No, and
Etwan
that's
Moore,
where
Jason
that's
Maxiell,
tough.
Jameer Nelson. I mean, these
Hmm.
are, you had to be, casual fans do not know these names.
Mm-mm.
A lot of
No,
a lot of young Orlando Magic fans wouldn't even know those names.
that's like
Um,
you say. He didn't get not really a fair skate. Is probably the best way to put it. Like just tough rosters, no superstars. He's been with the Nets forever. I think that really helps him. He's been with them now. Let's go 9 years. So I think it's a better hire. I think from an internal standpoint and what they're dealing with at turmoil, I think it's a better hire. I don't know if it works. We'll see. He does have a winning record so far. It's only
yep.
5 games, but the players had a lot of good stuff to say. Katie had some good stuff to say too.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'm going to talk football here briefly for a second because that's just, I have something very recent that's close to me that I can use as an example here. So, shameless plug before we dive in. I covered this topic for Indie Intercept, brought to you by Fan Rant and Stadium Rant. So, if you want my full thoughts on this, check that article out. But my beloved Indianapolis Colts, as seen above this shoulder, just recently did the exact opposite when it came time to announce their interim coach, and they went with a former player who, again, I mean, is going to light a fire and be a real rah rah kind of guy. But there were some very qualified and tenured coaches
Hmm.
on that staff that I thought could have very easily uh, manned the ship for the last
Hmm.
half of the season. And I think the Nets have done this the right way by, like you said, these guys been
Hmm.
here for almost a decade. He knows the culture. He knows what it's like to work with the general
Knows
manager, what
those
it's like to work with
guys.
the owner. The players know him. It's easier because they're already going to have that fresh blood aspect, sort of, right?
Hmm.
Like if there really was, we talked about this last week. I am adamant still that if Kevin Durant was comfortable enough to be vocal about his dislike for Steve Nash, that he was not the only one. I don't believe
I agree with you.
that he would be that vocal if he was on an island there. I mean, say what you want about him. I don't think he's a bad teammate. And so I do think there's some of that, like, okay, we got rid of some of the negativity in this locker room, but yeah, it's not a complete, we didn't just pull some guy off the
Hmm.
street who was coaching high school last year to ask him to learn how to, like, Jacques Vaughn knows what's going on. And even if he might not be the best X's and O guy, he might not be a schematic genius or anything. There's enough talent on this roster for them to maybe not need that. They just kind of need a calming presence and maybe somebody who will adjust his game plan throughout
Hmm.
the course of the game.
I, I think you're right. I think without diving too much into it, I think the Nets did it right, and I think the Colts kind of did a head scratching. I think bringing Ime into it would have been almost it'd been a little bit similar because he's got the head coaching experience and he made the finals last year. However, it's just the season's already started. You're bringing somebody from the outside. You don't have time to make major changes, et cetera, et cetera. And having somebody that's already there, bought into that culture, part of it, he's ingrained in that culture. He's built it. He's been there for so long. I think that'll help them out in the long run. I think he'll be able to right this ship and get these guys trending. They're too talented to be this bad.
Ain't
I mean,
that the
that's the best
truth?
way to put it, you know.
And either I could use either of your last two sentences to segue smoothly into the next topic. So instead, I'll just point at it and make it incredibly painful for all of us. But speaking of disappointments and riding ships and too talented to be this bad, Up next are the Los Angeles Lakers. So we have gone full circle on this one, James.
Okay, so we have to apologize to all our fans.
Mhm.
We got this wrong, Kev.
It's my bad.
We got this completely wrong. They have not won a game since the last time we talked about them, and we said they had fixed this. They are
Ye-
now 2-9, 2-9, 4 straight losses since we cursed them. The curse of the bounce. It's a thing now. It is now real. Um, I'm gonna throw some stats out for you from LeBron, and then I'm gonna ask you a question at the end. Okay? So LeBron's points per game are 24.9, the worst since his rookie year. He did have 30 before getting hurt last night. Career worst, 23.9 3-point percentage. You got to think it'll go up a little bit. I don't think it's going to stay that low. 45.7% from field goal percentage in total is the worst since his rookie year. And then he's shooting 67% from the free throw line.
Which
Got
is
hurt
just
again.
go ahead.
He's never been a great free throw shooter. I was stunned by his percentages. Um, he got hurt again last night. Hurts his groin. So he had 30 last night and went out in the fourth quarter. Kev, what do you do if you're the Lakers? Would you, in any world, consider trading him? And if you would anybody take him?
We are getting there with, in my opinion, as far as considering a trade of LeBron James. So I understand that, or from what I understand, I don't know that that's a possibility for this season.
Mm-hmm.
I
I actually
don't
think
understand how.
now
Go
that you
ahead.
say that, I'm pretty sure they actually can't this year. So this
Yeah,
is
I think it. Yeah.
amazing
So this is
hypothetical because of his
an
contract he
off-season
signed.
hypothetical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but he is under contract for next year. Wasn't it a 2-year deal? So like this is
Mm-hmm.
something that
Something goofy like that, yeah.
he is. If he's going to leave, this would have to be how. And I think you have to consider it when you look at how much of the future that the Lakers, mortgaged off to
Mm-hmm.
get that one title. And I'm about to be the 10,000th person to do this exercise, but if you just roll back the clock and you think what this roster could look like with, Kuzma and Randall and Jordan
Mm-hmm.
Clarkson, and there are more names that I'm forgetting right now
Well,
that
there's
were
a couple
all,
guys, yeah.
yeah, they were all part of this young nucleus. And I'm not saying you would have kept all of them,
Lonzo
but
was on that team.
yeah, Lonzo
Brandon
was on that.
Ingram.
Oh yes, it would be one, probably the
Yeah, the
biggest
big
one.
one's
One,
Brandon Ingram.
yeah,
Yes, I had
the
to
big.
just think, thought it clicked in my head.
And with a guy like Brandon Ingram growing into the league the way that he did, like they almost would have had a support like Alonzo Ball feeding it to Brandon Ingram,
Mm-hmm.
Julius Randle in the post when he doesn't have to be the guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think back on if they had just had some patience with, and then Kyle Kuzma as a fourth option is nasty. Like that's right where Kyle Kuzma needs to be, third or fourth option, not getting
Not
as
one or
much
two.
attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to
Mm-hmm.
let it fly, and he's going to be. That's when everyone went nuts for him, right? When he was a second
Mm-hmm.
round pick, didn't get a lot of attention. I called it. It just sort of somebody's got to be open when there's that much talent,
Mm-hmm.
and he has not done as well since. I mean, but again, all of these guys, I think about what might have been, and now you're looking
That's
at. Oh, go ahead.
that's the question is the what might have been, because yeah, they got that. So you get a title. You can't argue against it. They got a bubble title. I put an asterisk by it, but such is life. But how long would that core have been good for? You know,
Could be
all those
contending for the yeah.
Brandon Ingram is going to be stellar. He already is. He's going to be great for a while. Julius Randle makes the All-Star game with the Knicks. He hit it off down year last year, but he's back this year. Lonzo can't shoot, but he's a great point guard.
Wouldn't
Kuzma,
have to with that team, yeah.
they'd have been dangerous.
And instead, they're at a position where they almost are going to be forced into a rebuild with no ability to do it. This is why
You're
they haven't made
talking,
a move for Buddy and Miles yet, is because they only
mhm,
have 2 picks left. And so
yeah,
how could how unless you and Russell's not going to draw any picks in return. So
mm-mm.
what asset do you have that could help you get some young talent back and some draft picks? I think LeBron's the only tradable asset because realistically, I think you're not ready to decommit to Antonio Davis. Go Pacers.
Antonio
Anthony
McDyess, I got
Davis.
you.
Yeah.
He is back.
So Anthony Davis still got plenty of years. I don't know how many miles are left in those legs because
He's been
unfortunately
hurt
he
a
just can't
lot.
stay healthy.
He's
Yeah.
been hurt a lot.
But so I would consider it. And now I think the second part of your question is where things get interesting. Where is a fit for LeBron?
Mm,
I will tell you one that I've heard and then push it back to you because I want to hear if you have any ideas. Because the only idea I've
fire.
heard is ridiculous, and I've heard it from Stephen A. Smith, and it was that the Warriors should trade Clay and Draymond to the Lakers for LeBron, which I would love to see. I would do that in
It'd
NBA.
be
I would do that in
really cool
2K
to
all
see.
day.
It'd be really cool to see how that would be very fun. However, they would
Thank
never
you.
do
Yeah.
it. Never trading those guys are like that. That would be wild. It'd be wild.
And it just kind of again goes. I don't know. I will
It's
not.
like it's got to be a team that's good. That's what I'm looking at. Like a team that's good. Where would he fit?
Where does he fit? Right. That's the. I'm scratching my head. He needs shooters.
Yeah, he's
There's
got to have
almost no
shooters.
team I think that is currently built for him. I think that's why the Warriors is
You're
the
right.
easy
It
one to
is.
throw out because it's like, okay, well, who's the team with a cluster of shooters? Okay. Yeah, like if you could, hypothetically, if you could swap out Draymond for LeBron,
Oh
yeah, that's
my God! Yeah,
my God. Yeah.
him throwing passes to Clay and Steph and Jordan Poole and those. Geez, good. Get out of here.
He'd get an extra 3 years out of his career playing with those guys. On top of whatever, I mean, I'm not suggesting he's done this year anyway. I mean, just saying they could do so much around him that's the perfect fit.
Mhm.
Because otherwise, if you're bringing in LeBron, and this is, I mean, the Lakers are the prime example. If you don't bring in the right guys to play with him, it
It just
doesn't
doesn't
matter. It's a
work.
waste. It's a complete
Mhm.
waste. You're going to blow up your whole future. Um, and yes, Russell has continued to play pretty well off the bench. So it seems like they saw that aspect of it. Like they figured out what to do with him. Again, it's $47 million for that output. So, make of that what you will. But
It's-
it's not enough. They need shooters. Where are you going to get them?
That's the problem. Is you need shooters, and he's disgustingly one of the best 3-point shooters on the team right now. That's awful. He's shooting 32.5. Reeves is 33.3. After I praised him last week, we cursed this whole team. Brown Jr. 33.3. Christie's 66.7, but it's not on very many.
On 3 attempts, no.
And 3 attempts, so that doesn't count. Your boy Lonnie Walker, 29, essentially 30.
I'm still rooting for Lonnie.
Whoa.
I was this,
Kendrick Nunn shooting 25. That's bad. Bev shooting 26.
and a lot.
And a lot. These guys are
which is
shooting a
yeah,
lot.
which is again, if and this is why I said we went full circle because week 1 of this show, we said all of these things like, hey, these guys that they brought in are not volume shooters. They're guys that, okay, yes, technically they were shooting in the low to mid 30s from 3, but that's on 1 to 3 attempts per game when they are the third or fourth option on the court. Thus, it's because someone attacked the basket and drew a double team and now he's wide open. And that's why his percentage looks better than it is. When you ask these guys to go out there and make you some money, it's nowhere to be found. It's not who they are.
What would you guess Pat Bev's career 3-point percentage is? This one's he averages 4.2 threes a game over his career.
29%
Not
is
even
my guess.
close. He's a 37.6%
Is he?
3-point shooter. I cannot
Wow.
believe that. He's twice in his career shot 40.
Pick your poison, right? That, I mean, I guess
Now he's shooting
time and a
26%
place.
on the season.
Time and a place. Yeah,
Yeah.
there was a time when he played well within himself. When when he embraced the 3-and-D guy part of it.
Oh, he was so good for like those Clippers teams. So good.
Yep. And then just things got a little off the rails. Are you ready to call it with this team? They are 2-9. I think with any other team we'd be calling it, but because it's the Lakers, I think we're gonna get
You just look at the standings, man. They're second to last in the West. The only team behind them is Houston. Are they out of it? I mean,
Trying to
no.
lose.
Technically, they're only 4 games behind New Orleans for the 8th spot, but they've also got Golden State's ahead of them, not in the playoff, or technically in the playoffs. Minnesota's ahead of them. I don't see it. Who's going to fall out? I just don't see a team that's going to
Yeah, you've
drop
got San
like that.
Antonio that we expect to fall out, but
Yeah,
that's
expect
really
them right
it,
in
and
front of
they'll
them
be
to
replaced
fall
by Golden
out.
State. Yeah,
Golden State's going to get it together. That OKC team's young and fun. Like they're just going to be around that area. Like they could pass them.
I
Sacramento, I feel
expect.
the same.
Yeah,
But you're still talking about a 10th and still too far back.
and at that point, there's no guarantee then. Like I'm not ready to give up on Minnesota yet. I know
Mm-mm.
that I need to find more time for them in this podcast because I do want to talk about them some more because right now they are a bit of a disappointment. I expected them to take the next step, and here they are sitting
Mm-mm.
at 5-7. But
Have you
this
read any of their
it's a young
stats?
season.
Have you seen any of their
I
stats?
haven't.
I was digging into them today. They've got weird stuff going on. Like Cat's shooting better with Gobert off the court, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's
Been
like
there.
the other teams are shooting better. It's really goofy. The stuff's so goofy. Like it actually doesn't make sense. Like you read it and you're like, that's super random. Like
It makes
it,
sense to Pacers fans because we've lived this nightmare.
yeah,
This is Sabonis and Turner all over again.
100%. Yeah, yeah.
Where it's like, oh, it's not working on paper. It works so well, and as soon as they made this trade, I thought, wow, what I was so disappointed and
It's just
sad for Minnesota
mhm,
fans. Like, wow, you guys, you went out and you made a move. You made an aggressive move, and it's honestly, it's the worst move that you could have made for your team.
mhm.
And we talked about this before. It's another body to clog up.
That's exactly it, man.
I wonder these things like how well would Michael Jordan have done if he had played with like a Kareem or a Patrick? Like he never had a dominant center
Mhm.
that was in his way. So I'm taking it to the rim. I'm taking it to the rim. So to some extent, having Rudy Gobert there, just standing there to be a cinder block, is a detriment to what Anthony Edwards
Mhm.
can bring to you on the offensive side. So it's just what he takes away from this offense. I don't know that he is balancing it out defensively. Or I think it could have been better to bring another shot blocker in that has a smaller role. And then rather than bringing in a big name guy like Gobert, I just don't think a fit for what this team is built.
I agree. Yeah. Mhm.
And I want to get to, we had a comment here, so I definitely want to circle back and talk about that quickly because we encourage you all to leave comments. We want to hear from you. We want to answer your questions. So Trevor shouts out, Trev
Mhm.
mentions that LeBron could play on a cheap contract too. He doesn't need the money, which is a great point. And that's another wrinkle into the difficulty of finding a trade partner for him because I think we're all kind of watching the clock for Bronny and Bryce. Is it
Mhm.
because now it's not just one son that LeBron wants to play with. Now it's multiple sons that he
That's
would
where
like
I
to
think
stick
you could
around.
see the cheap contract coming in 2 years.
Yep,
Who drafts Bronny?
100%. And I honestly would expect, yeah, at that point, yeah, he's going to wait and see who who drafts him and what moves can I make, and then at
The
that point,
question is, at that point, how effective is he? Is it just a publicity stunt type deal where you sign him? Like he's not going to fall completely off the map, but if he's averaging 24 this year, what does it look like in 2 years? Did Father Time finally catch him? Happens to
yeah,
everybody.
will it be Jordan with the Wizards, which again
Hmm.
is sort of like a meme to people, but go back and look at Jordan's stats with the Wizards. They're only laughable because it's Michael Jordan. Like they're not laughable in any other
No, yeah.
instance. Like for a
Hmm.
38, like they're good stats. I mean, he's a good player. I mean, you can make the argument that that All Star was sort of a sham All Star that he won.
Hmm.
Probably wasn't earned in the stat sheet, but yeah, I mean, is that what we're going to get? Are we going to get just the shell of LeBron? I've said it before. LeBron needs to go start hanging out with Vince Carter and guys like Kyle Korver and just learn those nuances. Call Reggie Miller, just start
Hmm.
talking. There are these dudes that like Vince Carter is the one I say because he extended his career by 8 years by going from a high flyer
Yep.
to just a corner three guy, just using his brain. And one thing I don't think anyone would try to take away from LeBron is his basketball IQ. So if he can learn
No.
how to
Mm-mm.
just be the kind of guy you can't afford to leave open, he
Yep.
could do a Udonis Haslam and play for 20 years. And I mean,
How
he
about the
just
fact
might
that he
come in.
played earlier in the season? Dude hadn't played in like 5 years.
He came in. Well, who got clotheslined? Who did
Right?
Udonis Haslam need to foul and get a tech on? But yeah, it'll be interesting. I definitely think by the time the younger Braun gets in, that we'll be seeing that decline from his father at that point. But
Hmm.
you know, I said that about Tom Brady in 2017. So maybe don't take my word. Don't bet on that. Any bets you make are at your own risk. And while we're talking about risks and bets, and oh, we've been spammed again in the
Yeah,
chat.
we got
So
spammed again.
get out of here, spammers. We don't want any of that. I've got some. We brought up the Western Conference standings. So I'm going to pull up the East here because we still have some surprises, both
Hmm.
of the positive and negative variety. I'm I'm going to start. Clearly, you can tell that I grabbed this screenshot because the Pacers are
They're
highlighted.
lit up
So
there. Yep.
surprise number one, how are the Nets and the Heat worse than the Pacers and the Wizards? It's too early to call it on this, but those are my two negatives. Obviously,
Hmm.
Brooklyn's issues are well documented, but Miami is a surprise to me. What are some of the surprises for you, James, when you look at this?
You're obviously right with those are the two big ones, and you could factor Philly in there too at 9, only at 5 and 6, tied for eighth. Obviously, James Harden's hurt. However, they got too much firepower. It just doesn't make any sense. A good one, good surprise is Atlanta. They're 7-4. The Deontay Murray Trey Young experiment's absolutely working out for them.
Yep.
Deontay Murray's last 3 games, I think he played one without Trey Young. His last 3 games is 27.7 points per game, 10 assists a game, 7 rebounds a game, 3.7 steals a game. And I think it's 1.5 blocks a game. I think I forgot to put that in there. He's that experiment is working out in their favor. Where we talk about the Towns Gobert one not working out yet, this one has worked
Yep.
out fantastic, and it's really Murray who changed his game because he doesn't have the ball in his hands near as much now. But it's actually Trey Young's in a nasty shooting slump right now. Like he's actually been worse this year, but it's not his game hasn't really changed as much. He's just not shooting it worth a crap at all right now.
Which I think will level out. I think that's
Hmm.
a part of who Trey is. He's a very streaky shooter, so I'm sure
Yeah.
he's due for a couple of nights, a string of maybe 2 or 3 30-point games in a row where he kinda dials it back in, but yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm pleasantly surprised by that as well, and you hit the nail on the head with that one when you were talking about Murray, because that was my big concern was how was
Hmm.
he going to adapt, and then you add to, and maybe I read too much into it, but Murray had his issues in those summer leagues where
Hmm.
he was kind of taking frustrations out at dudes who were like me working a 9 to 5 the next day.
Yep.
Like, I get it, it's all fun and
Yep.
games, and I would say, if you don't want to play in those pro ams, like say, can't hang with the big dog, stay on the porch. But still, to me, I've always felt it's a little disrespectful when you're athletically superior to just treat an average Joe like that. And
Hmm.
maybe that guy had earned it. For all I know, he could have been the Larry Bird of trash talk, and maybe he had gotten under Dejounte's skin. But however, when you see stuff, it raised concern because I'm like, oh man, this could be a bad situation for a
Hmm.
guy who has an ego problem, who's definitely not about to be the primary ball handler on this team. But as you said, they've adapted very well, and
Yep.
I expect this team. I mean, 6 feels better to me than 4, but I expect Atlanta to kind of keep this pace for some time.
I would think
I
so. That sounds about where they're at. And like,
Yeah,
go ahead.
no, go ahead.
And that's just Deontay Murray. He was such a ball dominant guard for the Spurs that the shift in his game has been really impressive. That was the big worry there when you put those two mega ball handlers together. Which one's going to give it up? And it absolutely was him. And kudos to him. He's playing great right now. But to be able to do that and play more off the ball is really really hard. Takes a lot
Yeah,
more to be able to do that.
and a completely different. I mean, you're changing your practice habits, like what you're focusing on the majority of
Hmm.
your time throughout the week. How you study the playbook, and when you think about it, in a position that a guy like Deontay is in, I am assuming that he's playing both roles because I imagine that Nate McMillan, that they are tearing him off, right? So
Mhm.
most times when you see this, anytime you have two ball handling guards, like you don't take them both off the court at the same time.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
it's sort of like when Trey gets his first break, DeJounte's either taking over or DeJounte gets his first break, and when he comes back, it's out for Trey. And
Mhm.
so he's got to not only learn this new job, but also still be good enough at running the offense and facilitating things that he's still a threat there. So yeah,
Mhm.
kudos to him. And he's not. I mean, that's a young and talented team over there. I am happy for Atlanta fans. I think
Mhm.
they have something worth being excited about. Um, and speaking of teams that have something to be excited about and trends, third week in a row. At what point do we not get to call the Utah
Um,
Jazz a surprise? I
at
don't know.
this, I don't know. When do we rule it off?
Here's
Like
what I found.
they they went 4-0 since we talked about them last week.
Yeah,
Beat the Lakers twice, beat the Clippers, and beat the Hawks. I just wrote down what is going on. I don't like you got Jordan Clarkson at career high points, 18.6. Markkanen's career year, he had 32 last night. We already talked about him. Mike Conley's averaging 8 assists a game. That'd be the highest of his career, 1.5 more per game than he's ever averaged. He's eighth in the NBA, and then he's shooting 41.3% from three, highest of his career. Like, I don't. Here's the thing, like, so they technically already blew this team up. They traded their two best players. They got an absolute crap ton of picks back. They've now won enough games that they can't be considered in the lottery. Do they just ride this out at this point and
I
see?
I think they do. And then once you get to the trade deadline, you have to hope. I think what's scary for Jazz fans is if they are around that 5 or 6 spot when that trade deadline rolls around.
Mhm.
That's when
It's
I'll get.
dangerous.
Yeah, I'm stun locked at that point because I'm like, well, shit. Do we become buy? Oh, sorry, so sorry. Do we become buyers or sellers? Forgive my
Mhm.
language. Um, but it's because all it takes is a one bad week. If you're in the
Mhm.
middle of the pack, all it takes is 4 or 5 losses in a row to be like, oh man, we really should
Yep.
have sold those assets because there's no guarantee that these guys come back to you.
Mhm.
And we were talking about this last week. We were worried. You posed the question: how many wins is going to be too many for
10's too
Utah?
many. It,
Tends to, yeah, we're
this
getting
quick.
there.
This quick is way too many. You've got teams with, Houston's got 2 wins. You've got Charlotte with 3, Detroit, Orlando, both 3. Like, those teams aren't winning games ever. I mean, I guess I should say the Lakers. I don't have their pick though, but they do have 2 wins.
Right.
Like, 10's probably too many. Let's look up.
Yeah, so we've got we see like San Antonio, Sacramento, Oklahoma here that for sure just on their side that we feel pretty confident won't catch Utah at this pace. And then we go to the East. You got Detroit, who I am admittedly that's a negative surprise for me at
Hmm.
3-9. I thought they'd be a little bit better than this. And then Orlando, everyone else. I mean, and then Indiana is in that same territory with the Spurs where even they're as a fan, they're winning more games than I would like right now.
Yep.
But
So,
again, I'd still see them. They're not catching Utah. So yeah, Utah. I mean, what are we looking at? Maybe around 9, 10 right now at best,
here, so
and
here's
that's if they
I
keep
just
losing.
I just looked up last year. So teams that were in the lottery, like the top last year, top odds for the number one pick. The Pistons had 20 wins, Magic had 21, Cleveland had 22, Thunder had 22, the Rockets had 17. So the Rockets were the number one team percentage wise to get the number one pick last year. They didn't get it. However, so the Jazz have 10 wins already. They could only get 7 more to be just even with last year, with the top team odds last year. And that's not happening unless you just wipe the roster out and you start playing me and you out there. Then you lose
Yeah,
them all.
yeah, you'd have to start, uh, you know, putting guys on injury reports and using up some G
Uh-huh.
League 10-day contracts and resting everyone on this back half of a back to back. And yeah, lots of things that at a certain point I think would get you in trouble, maybe even with the league, if not certainly
Right.
with your own fan base.
Yeah, they would
I
not
think
be thrilled.
there's only a certain extent of tanking that people will tolerate. But yeah, I don't know what they're going to do because it now more than ever, you I get the feeling that fan opinions seem to matter with front offices.
Hmm. Weirdly,
Maybe
yeah,
it's
they do.
yeah, they pay more attention than they used to, and I think it's probably just a numbers game. It's harder to avoid it, but it's a personality thing. It really depends on, again, to pull back from the Colts thing. We have Jim Irsay as an owner to deal with. He clearly is very active in social media, and
Hmm.
it takes those opinions to heart when you have owners that. So what are the Jazz going to do? Are they going to listen to their fans if their fans insist? Say, hey, we think we can make a run at this, because I still don't see it as a legitimate title contending team at
Mm-mm.
right this second. I don't. Teams can get hot, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's way too much time between now and the playoffs, and for a 7-game grinded out series, there's no way I'm picking Utah to win it all right now. But
So
the
just look at the
fans might.
teams behind them. You got Phoenix, Portland, Denver, Memphis, Dallas, Clippers, Pelicans are down there. Golden State's not even in the playoffs technically right now. Are you picking any of those teams in 7 games? It's you picking them against anybody? Like their
Who am I
record,
to right now? I may be taking them over
a couple of
Portland
them.
because Portland's in a similar boat where I just didn't expect
Hmm.
them to be winning this much, and I'm still waiting that out, and then potentially Dallas, just because I am afraid that Dallas is just once again going back to Luka Doncic
The
and
Luke,
friends.
yeah.
He just doesn't have enough support, so I
There
could
are
see.
it's Luka Doncic. That there's nothing else. There's no friends. That's it. That's it.
Oh, poor Christian Wood. It's gonna work out, guys, but they need to make a move. But to answer your question, yes, no, they're, let's see, Phoenix, Denver, Memphis, Clippers. Honestly, right now, 7 games. Give me the Pelicans over the
Hmm.
Jazz right
Yeah.
now. And so yeah, you have to get it down. Now we're down into the play-in teams now. So at that point, yeah, I will not be surprised to see Utah win a first round playoff matchup, but I think that's about it. And
Yep.
that's the last place you want to be.
Mm-mm. You've been in that
It's
purgatory. You were
mhm,
there for so long.
exactly. And it's a endless
It's
cycle.
it screws you long term too, because then you just can't get those high enough draft picks. You're just good enough to be bad.
And you're just hoping to land on a Kawhi at 17 or a Danny
Hmm.
Granger or a Paul George at 9. And then inevitably, because the rest of your plan isn't good, those guys, as soon as they
Well,
can, they go somewhere else. Which again, Utah, there's a lot of similarities between those markets. When you think about
mhm.
Utah and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Pacers, and similar amounts of success,
Hmm.
or lack thereof, depending on your
Yep.
standards for
Hmm.
that word. But were there any other surprises as of right now that we didn't cover here with the standings, or just any individual guys you've been looking at?
You mentioned Portland. We they're just
Yes.
they're much better than I expected. Just going
S-
through my
8-3,
notes.
yeah.
Hmm.
Again, it's very impressive. What's their health like? I need to pull that up, because last time we checked on them, Lillard was still nursing an injury, and
I
we were
know what
happy to report that Nurkic was not. Nurkic was not. So
right. I think Lillard's back. If my understanding, let me end up pulling this up right now. Lillard's only missed 2 games, so I believe he came back last weekend. I'm pulling up his game log real quick.
And I'm still keeping Shaden Sharp on. You will see him again on the rookie watch, which we'll probably briefly touch on this week, because I am going to start getting accused of just making
Right.
this segment just so I can talk about Benny
Yeah.
Matherin. So, but we will. Shaden Sharp is gonna make an appearance, because I have faith that we're going to continue to watch his growth over time. And it's interesting, you know, we haven't talked much about the rookie wall here on this show yet, but it's very much
Hmm.
has been a real thing with players. And when you look at a guy like Sharp, whose rookie wall will be much shorter because he didn't even play college basketball. So it's
So
just like,
yeah, so
man, like,
interesting.
how are you going to have the legs? I think he's kind of a guy that because he's going to be held back and slowly moved along, that he could actually like where the rest of the rookies are getting fatigued could be when Sharp kind of
Mhm.
comes into his own, and I could see him making a late push for Rookie of the Year because of that fact, just because of recency bias. What have you
Yep.
done for me lately, kind of thing.
Oh, you're absolutely. It's possible. Absolutely possible.
So
The
does
other,
that cover? Oh, go ahead.
I got one just player wise surprise, and we talked about it. I can't say his name. Shea. I'm gonna call him SGA. Shea. Oklahoma City Thunder. Point
Yeah.
guard is having a monster year. 31.6 points per game. He's fifth in the league. He had 39 last night on 25 shots, taking a ton of shots. Splits 50, 53, 32, 90, essentially 95. And then the other stats too: 5.6 assists per game, 4.5 rebounds per game, 1.9 steals per game, 1.5 blocks per game. I actually might have screwed that up. I think that's where my 1.5 blocks per game came from. He's good, man. And the
Oh yeah.
Thunder are stockpiling young talent. They're going to be good someday. Not
It-
necessarily this year. Chet's out this whole year, but
yep.
they are going to be really good.
And that Chet thing is a big factor because you just talked about it. They're stockpiling draft picks.
Mhm.
Shout out to my fantasy basketball team because Shea is carrying us right now.
Carrying you
He
to
is
the
doing
top, baby.
great things. It's all Shea and Jason Tatum, and everybody else just kind of a bum, guys. Let's pick it up.
Oops.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But yes, they, in a sense, and I don't mean to make light of an injury. Obviously, Chet would rather be playing. I'm sure Oklahoma fans and the franchise would rather
Mhm.
him be healthy and playing. However,
There's a silver lining to that kind of thing.
now they have that opportunity to
Mhm.
just lose more games, get yet another solid lottery pick, and this could be.
Mhm.
This feels like a second coming of what this team did right the first time.
Yep, I
We have like
agree.
we have Chet Durant, we have Shea Gilchrist Westbrook, and now we just need to draft our blank Harden to fit
Yep.
into the mix. And then boom, here they go again. They're going to have a young
Mhm.
nucleus ready to win for years. And I think this time they will have learned the lesson, hopefully, from how they didn't
Right.
ascend to the mountaintop last time and maybe make a few better mistakes. Maybe dip into the luxury tax. It's okay to do that. It's
Especially when
okay.
you got those kind of dudes, like
Yeah.
keep them
Yep.
around. You always forget. I always forget Josh Giddey's on that team too.
Oh, exactly. Okay, yeah, Josh Harden, that could be it. You never know.
Yep.
He could be it. But yeah, they
Second year guy.
so much talent and potential there that I do
Mhm.
think at some point I made the joke during the draft, like 2027 NBA Finals, Pistons, Thunder. Like it's
They're gonna have all the draft picks. Who else is gonna? Nobody else is gonna have players.
yeah. It's gonna be Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham
Right.
versus Shea and Chet in the finals, and I'm gonna love every second of it. But no, that's a team that is poised for great
Mhm.
things as long as they handle it properly. And I don't really have any other major surprises as of now. So I'm going to pull up the Friday slate real quick. We have a couple of these games that we will look
Yep.
more closely at, but yeah, this is what we're looking at. Of course, to me, the games that stick out are Boston, Denver. We have Minnesota, Memphis in a game that I
Mhm.
think Minnesota really needs to win. Followed by a game that the Warriors need to win, but conversely, a
Mhm.
huge game for the Cavs. I don't care if it's a four and
What a
seven Warriors,
monster game there, man. That is a monster game.
and it's not very often you hear me say this, but the Lakers are kind of in a must-win against the Kings. It's whatever bizarro world we're living in, but it's the same thing I think that we said about what the Jazz have done is true with the Lakers. They can't like they can lose more games this season. They just can't lose too many more like in the next 3 weeks.
Mhm.
There's a certain hole that got when your team's built around veterans the way that there is, like this team's not going to rattle off 12 straight wins. They're
No.
just not. So you kind of got to start digging yourself out of this hole now before you're
Mhm.
just done. So as weird as it is to 11 games in, yes, I'm sticking to it. That's a must win for LA. If you're losing to a 4-6 Kings team,
Mhm.
I have no answers
No,
for you.
they got nothing for you. Nothing.
I think it's worth noting that the Suns should be on upset watch because the Magic did pull out a win in their last
Mhm.
game. I'm very, very surprised by that.
Banchero's really, really good. He's stellar. That Cleveland Golden State game tomorrow night, the late game tomorrow is really fun.
Yeah, let me pull that. We can start that with our as we preview these games. I pulled up the pick stuff here, some of the spread money line stats. So uh, of
That
of
game's still gonna
course,
be fun.
of course, Golden State's still favored. But how are you feeling about that spread? What do you, I now again disclaimer
Oof.
here. Let me hide this really quickly and look into the camera. Okay, any betting picks are done for entertainment purposes
Mhm.
only, and make any bets at your own risk. We are not experts, so sorry. I just wanted to make sure I don't get a
Make
call
sure people
from
know
the
this.
lawyers later. So we'll pull this back up now that we're safe. And what hypothetically speaking, how do you feel about this?
I
Where would
I
your
would
money go?
I love Cleveland in this game. I love Cleveland. I think they've got something to prove. They're young. Darius Garland's back too now. Donovan Mitchell's having a heck of a year. Golden State's struggling, man. Like they've got Steph and everybody else is struggling on that team. They're having it's been tough. Where's their
I I wonder how much of it is still lingering. For I mean,
I don't even.
listen, yeah, you know this, right? We both know this. Locker like
Yep.
there's chemistry is a big deal in sports, and I imagine that locker room's still pretty split. I know that it would be difficult in most settings for a group of people when
Mhm.
somebody when two people come to blows like that, unless somehow those two are miraculously friends now and they're all over it. It almost I feel like that's just a wedge that's going to sit there in that
I
locker room as
agree.
long as those two guys are there. And I thought that the talent could overcome. You see that all the time in not just sports but in music, like how many tumultuous relationships still
Mhm.
yield great results. So I wasn't willing to say, "Oh, this fight will kill the Warriors," because no, that's
We
not
both
true.
agreed we thought they would be fine. There's just the stats of everybody's they just don't look. Steph's having a mega year. Wiggs is at 18 games normal. Jordan Poole's down 3 points per game. Clay's down. Their shooting percentages are down. It doesn't seem right.
And I'm happy to listen to any other explanation, but again, when you talk about this stuff
Yep.
outside of Jordan Poole, because you could make the argument with Jordan that his ascension last year, that there would be a natural regression from that because A,
Mhm.
he's not catching anyone by surprise. People are
Yep.
actively going to be looking for him to do these things. And B, it's just kind of a natural thing that, because now his expectations for himself are higher. All
Mhm.
kinds of stuff play into this. But outside of the Jordan Poole one, which is also, I mean, he's the guy who also got sucker punched, so he probably has a lot going on upstairs too.
Mhm.
I can't think of a reasonable explanation for why these seasoned veterans would all of a sudden not be performing unless you just want to play the old card. But Steph's just as old as all the rest of them.
That's
So
exactly it. You're
what is it?
absolutely
If
right.
it's not tension in the locker room, tell me what it is.
Mhm.
Because we've seen this team be good. The only time we've seen this team play this poorly is when they've been injured. We,
Yep.
they've never been even the year before Clay came back. They still flirted and got into the play, and which is kind of right where they're at right now. So
Mhm.
we've never seen this team at full strength be this
No.
underwhelming.
God, and Steph's shooting 50. He's 51, 43, 93 right now. He's having wow. He's having a monster. It's just the rest of them. It doesn't make any. Clay's shooting 32.6%. Jordan Poole 30% from three. Like something's wrong.
Maybe Clay is trying to get traded to the Lakers. He's like,
Maybe
let me
get
get my
out of
shooting
there. I
percentage
guess.
back to where it looks more natural fit there, and then he'll.
He was down a little bit last year too, but not like that. I mean, this is the
And
lowest of his career since his rookie year points per game. Not even close. He averaged 20 points a game last year too.
still, yeah. So, and I expected that as well. I'm sure a lot of us did, just because Jordan Poole did so much. That how do you keep the younger guy who
Mhm.
can do almost all the same things that Clay can do, and he has a longer future? How long do you keep that guy at bay for the sake of
Yeah.
the guy who got you some titles, but is not the same guy he used
Tough,
to be.
tough
Uh,
balancing act between future and past. Yep.
yeah. And I think it comes to I think Clay would probably go through a similar Westbrook arc. Like I don't know that and to be fair, we talked about Manu Ginobili when we talked about this Westbrook thing last week. If memory serves, I'm not sure that he was jumping up and down to be coming off the bench either. Like no one who's been great at something for a decade is going to enjoy being told, "Okay, it's your time to step aside and let the next guy
Correct.
have
Yeah.
your spot." And we
Mhm.
also want you to teach him and help him get better at it. Like I've had to
Yep.
do that before in a day job where, "Oh, hey, we passed you over for this role, but the person we hired, since you're the highest, you're going to have to train them how to do the job that we
Yep.
didn't think you were
Just
qualified for." That's not an easy pill to swallow for anyone. But especially again, pro athletes have egos, and that's okay. They have to do what they
hmm
do. But when you have a strong ego, and now you're, because of an injury, you got some guy with the attitude of a Jordan Poole and the presence of a Jordan
hmm
Poole.
just
Yeah, 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 yeah. The one thing
yeah,
that could beat the Warriors was the Warriors.
themselves. Yeah, and that's right now. Right now, that's what it looks like.
Well, there's another. Well, I'm gonna stick with the late slate because I think the game that follows this, or the game that is before this tomorrow night, but the next one we're going to talk about, I think, is a little more of an interesting matchup. But Memphis and Minnesota, a tale of 180s here, because I think
hmm
these were two teams on similar trajectories last year. Now, to be fair, what Memphis did is much more impressive than what Minnesota did last year, but I think they were two teams that were a little ahead of schedule. And Memphis very ahead of schedule. Minnesota just, we thought they were a play-in team. That's kind of exactly what they were. Although I have an issue with that 7 seed should have just been in the playoffs. There was such a gap between 7 and 8
hmm
last year that they need to fix the play-in. But that's a topic for another episode. So we see here with these two teams, Memphis has held serve, to borrow
Yep.
from another sport, and Minnesota has not. They are 5-7. We talked a little
hmm
bit earlier about why we think that is, but my question here is does Minnesota have a chance in your mind, James, to turn it around against Memphis?
They always, I mean, you always have a chance. The question is, can they keep up? The Desmond Bain and Ja Moran are on a tear, man. Like they are so good. They are unbelievable. I mean, they were on that graphic we showed earlier. They both had 30 last night.
Yeah, exactly. They have been blowing it up, and I am over here looking for the injury report because I believe Jaron Jackson Jr. is not even back yet.
He is
Uh,
not. He's out
yeah,
for a while. Didn't he have surgery?
yeah, they've been pretty vague about
hmm
his timeline, and there are those that expect it to be after Christmas. I've heard, maybe
hmm
even into the new year. I think they purposely have made it sound like he could come back sooner.
I'm
But
trying to. Yeah.
yeah, but that's a huge lift. And because again, another thing that professional basketball players or even college players or high school, when a guy who plays basketball gets injured and it's not his shooting hand, he has a lot of time to get better at shooting the basketball. So I
hmm
anticipate Jaron Jackson to be a much more dangerous presence from beyond the arc when he comes back. So I
hmm
expect him to have a slightly more polished offensive game because he's got the time to focus on that. You can't when you're stuck like that, when you're injured, you can't rely on your physical attributes. You forced to kind of slow down and think about the game and let your brain catch up to what your body can do. And then, of course,
hmm
the other thing is practice your shooting. So if he's making the most out of his time, that's like making a big midseason trade, right?
Yep.
Getting a guy
hmm
of that quality to add to an 8-4 already team that we expect to still kind of have about a similar, win
hmm
percentage. They're really dangerous.
And you talk about shooting, like he's going to come in better. These dudes are shooting lights out. Jaws 45%, Desmond Bain's 46%, Dylan Brooks 42.6, even Trey Jones is 36. Conquer down at the bottom, they're 42%. Jake LaRavia in limited is 52. Like those numbers are crazy.
Jake.
That's my boy.
Yep.
They're shooting 38.6%. Jake didn't shoot like that in college for us, by the way. He shot like 70% around the rim, not outside. We didn't really play him outside, which is I wonder who screwed that one up. I wouldn't don't play with him. One of us is out of the business, and the other one's in the NBA. I mean, they're 38.6% as a team from downtown. That's disgusting. That's horrifying.
Yeah. What are you gonna do?
Exactly. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, what are you gonna do when you have that? And then yeah, when you get once they get an inside presence on top of that, yeah, pick your poison. And
Hmm.
also the defensive stuff too. What did he lead the league? He was if he didn't lead the league, he was right up there in shot blocking last year, or blocked shots, however you want to say it. I'm struggling
Hmm.
today. I am struggling to speak. But yeah, I think Minnesota. I don't even know if I'd like the spread with them on this one.
It's a lot. I
As
don't.
my
I just Minnesota's struggling, and it's in Memphis. It's not at home. That
mhm.
one's. I just Minnesota's got some work to do. They're built completely different. They got some work to do to figure it out.
Yep, they need to win, but I think it gets ugly. And
Hmm.
and I'll bring up our final spotlight for the Friday slate, at least, which is I guess ironically the first game. We went backwards here, but this is the best. Like on
Hmm.
paper, Cleveland Golden State is great on paper, with the except then you look at their records and all the
Yeah.
reasons we talked about with Golden State. This is probably the best game. This is the game that features the two best teams as far as how are they playing right now,
Hmm.
and what are their records. And so we've got Denver at Boston, and Boston is the favorite here by 4.5. What are your first thoughts
This
here on
is
this one, James?
just like this game's very. This is so fun. That game is so fun. I tend to lean Boston at home. Just because they're at home, I'd probably lean this the other way if it was in Denver. Jamal Murray's still working his way back. The Joker is the Joker. That game is. Boston doesn't have Robert Williams still. He's out for, I think he's out for like half the season with that. He had knee surgery in the offseason, I think. Whew, that one's fun. Michael Porter Jr. is finally playing. He's not hurt yet. Fingers crossed for him.
For audio quality, I won't knock on wood, but I'll get you guys when we end here. So, but yes, and it's same thing for both teams, especially with Jamal Murray because of the level of play we've seen. Like it
Hmm.
feels so long ago to me, honestly, when I think about the Murray Jokic playoff run.
Hmm. It was, man. It
It,
was technically 2 playoffs ago because he missed. He got hurt during the players and he missed all season.
yeah, and I just am nostalgic for it, and I believe that just like with Jack, maybe more so than Jackson, of all the teams, he might be one of the best injured players that'll be coming back. And based on his timeline, that is going to be
Hmm.
such an injection of energy for the Nuggets. And again, they've done they've managed to do really well without him. So I of course there could be some growing pain when they have to bring him back into the fold, but ultimately, man, it's going to be such a big addition if he can stay healthy. I think that you have to put the Nuggets back into the conversation
Hmm.
as a potential conference champion, because at the end of the day, they're going to have the best big man on the floor
He's so good, man.
until they
So
get to the
good.
finals. So yeah,
He's
exactly.
averaging 21, 9, and 9. That's just nuts.
Come
That's
on, get the
nuts,
triple
man.
double, man. Get
His
it.
his scoring's way down this year, which is interesting. The last 2 seasons, he averaged 27, 26, and he's only averaging 21 this year. It's interesting.
I that is. I have
Quite a
to.
few less shots. Well, it's tough. Do you compare it to last year when Jamal and Michael Porter Jr. were out all season, or do you compare it to 2 years ago?
When you had
How,
those guys,
yeah.
and I
Now,
to oh, go ahead.
2 years. I mean, I say this, but then 2 years ago, you look at the stats, and they're almost identical back to back years. So that's interesting. Very interesting there.
And I'm wondering if it isn't. And I'll want to watch some tape going on. I'm going to watch this game tomorrow that we're previewing and see what I can find. But I'm wondering if it isn't something that if he's changing sort of his approach a little bit,
Hmm.
understanding that in order to achieve their ultimate goal, he's going to need a little more offense from his
Yeah,
teammates. And so I wonder if he's
it's
maybe making
absolutely
a
possible.
conscious effort to get them more involved, which, maybe isn't is reflected by his lower scoring numbers. But I don't know. Where are the assists? Are they up or down? I feel like it's
They
about
are
the
up.
same.
They are
Are they
up.
up?
Actually,
Okay.
they're 1.1 up from last year. They're
Okay.
0.7 up from 2 years ago, which was his career high at 8.3. So you might be onto something there with that. That's a real possibility.
Yeah, I think that if I were a betting man, and I absolutely am, that would be my thought. Is that that's something he's looking to do to help build that confidence?
Uh-huh.
Because obviously, when they have Jamal, that's going to be a big help. But
The
everyone in Denver knows that Jokic can turn
mhm.
it on if he
Yeah,
needs to. So he's
yeah,
got to get these other
exactly.
guys ready to have that same confidence in themselves.
The other discrepancy I see this year with stats is his 3-point percentage is way down. He shot 30,
Oh,
essentially 34 last year, 39 2 years ago, only 25 this year, and just on 2.2 shots a game, so a full shot less. So that's the big difference I see is the 3-point percentage.
I'll be interested to see. So I always ask the same question. The first time anytime I hear that, I think two things. Like one, what we talked about earlier with all the guys the Lakers signed. Like,
Hmm.
were these guys catch and shoot? And then two, are they taking more threes off the dribble this year? Like,
Hmm.
where they were once a catch and shoot guy, have they gotten too confident and now they want to do a little serving it up before and take, because some guys are, it's a completely different rhythm, right? You
Hmm.
catch and
Oh,
shoot.
it's so
You
different.
can you can set your feet. Some of us, depending on your coach, you might have had that back foot leaned, so you can catch as you step into it. It's a completely different, form from coming up from the dribble, having to pull it up into the pocket. So one of the things when I start to see them, like, okay, have you changed the types of threes that you're taking? Because the first one I think is are people just paying more attention to you and you're not getting as many open looks as you used to? But with
Hmm.
Jokic, this isn't Lonnie Walker here. This isn't a guy where I can say,
Hmm.
oh, yeah, they used to just leave him wide
Yep.
open. That was never the case, right? They were
Hmm.
never saying, oh, yeah, we'll just let the MVP shoot it. So
Yep. Hmm.
what is it? Has he decided to put the ball on the ground more? Like, what kind of threes is he taking? And is that having an impact on his
Hmm.
lower percentage? So something to keep an eye on. I'm not sure what the answer is, but if we find it, we'll let you know next week.
Yep.
That covers at least the three games that I had queued up ready to
Mhm.
preview. Do you have anything else up on this slate that you wanted to talk
We
about,
talked
James?
about that. We talked about them. I Sacramento, LA's intriguing for other reasons entirely, not because it's going to be a good game. It's can the Lakers salvage anything? Milwaukee, San Antonio's fine. Giannis, I don't know how long he's out for. Toronto, OKC's fun, just younger team. Those we hit the big ones because I think
Yep.
Phoenix blows out Orlando. New York should beat Detroit. Those games are fun. The games we talked about. Your main one, it's interesting that the Memphis Minnesota's game is the ESPN game.
Which is good. I think it. I mean, it has potential to be a
Yeah,
very
it
entertaining
it could
game.
be very different, very entertaining. Two different styles clashing there for sure.
Definitely going to have a lot. It'll be. I'm not sure how close it will stay, but while it's close in the first half, while the energy levels are high, I think that is a very entertaining game.
Mhm,
Just Anthony Edwards versus Ja Morant, for their contributions alone, it's worth having on in the background if you don't have
yes,
much going on Friday
abs
night that
I
late.
agree with you 100%.
Yeah, especially if you're not used to watching these guys. Like if you happen to be watching us and you're not a diehard, these are some guys
Mhm,
that you really want to get familiar with because they are the future of the NBA. I
mhm.
kid you not. We're looking at
Any chance you can check that Minnesota team or the Memphis team is awesome. You also catch Anthony Edwards in that game too. So you got a lot of young guys in that game that are fun.
Yeah, apples to oranges here, but it's kind of like an equivalent of if you were in the '80s getting a chance to watch Pistons and Bulls,
Mhm.
Isaiah playing against Jordan. Because when I
Yep.
watch, and there are people who have gone in and done side by side edits, and Anthony Edwards is another one of those guys who
Mhm.
clearly modeled his approach off of Jordan, and you can see it in the way he plays and the way he
Yep.
attacks the rim, and it's fantastic to watch. And there might be better comparisons for Ja Morant than Isaiah Thomas, but that's I
Just
do
easy.
think
It's
it's
just an
yeah, it's
easy
easy
way to
enough.
compare.
Yeah, Ja does a lot more athletic things that I'm not saying Isaiah couldn't do, but he just didn't. We don't have it on
Mhm.
tape.
Yeah,
So,
Ja's just
uh,
he's just an athletic freak. It's
yeah,
wild.
he's the future. And then when you pair him with Jaden Ivey, who is a very similar game, we got oh my, I'm so excited about the future of basketball. We
Yeah,
are
there's so many good young players, man. We are very, very spoiled in that regard. We have been for a while. Then the new guard's coming too, so that's a lot of fun.
It is so much fun, and it has been a lot of fun talking
Hmm.
basketball with you, James, and with all of you fine folks watching at home. We've cracked an hour again, and I'm thrilled about it.
Did it
So
again, buddy.
it's time, I think, to send him home. So we will start with you, James. Any where can they find you? I'll just leave it at that.
Titans Tilt podcast twice a week. Catch us here, usually 9 Eastern. Next week we will be back on our normal schedule. There is no premieres I have to catch next week. But yeah, so apologies on the lateness on this one, but I think it worked out for both of us. I think you ended up having to work a little late too, so it ended up working out for us.
Absolutely. Yeah, it worked out. And yeah, make sure check out that Titans Tilt podcast. You can find it. It's part of the Stadium Rant Network,
Mhm.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. And as for me, you can find me on that same network. So I would just go ahead and subscribe to it if I
Mhm.
were you. The Indie Intercept podcast. We go live Fridays and Sunday nights at 9. And you can also find me on or at Bite Size Sports if you want to just listen to me rant about things for 10 to 15 minutes.
Mhm.
That you are welcome to do. So until next time, thank you so much for watching. We will see
Thank
you
you for
next
joining us,
Thursday.
folks.